If the person who whispers, "I believe in you," stole the very idea that made you feel real, would you forgive them or make the world watch them fall? The city had two colors in early winter, wet steel and warning red. Our headquarters, 6. Floors of glass and ego rose above a ferry terminal where gulls argued like board members. I had spent 4 years inside that building learning how to make strangers want things, ideas, products, illusions. It was the only place where every sentence could be a weapon if you sharpened it long enough. Her name was Jules Mercer, same age bracket as my ambition, slightly older than my patience. The first time we met, she'd been leaning over a whiteboard, sleeves folded with surgical precision, sketching a funnel that turned attention into money. She didn't look at me so much as audit me. Then she smiled, small and private, and said, "Ava Lynn, right? The copywriter who writes like a camera pans." I pretended my heart didn't do the thing it does when a stranger sees your work exactly. We were a secret long before we were anything that counted. Office romances in our building weren't forbidden, just devoured by gossip. She liked her privacy. I liked my control. We calibrated time, staggered exits, separate elevators, lunches, in different corners that somehow ended in the same alleyway diner where the napkins already knew our names. At night, our apartments fused into one life across 2 addresses. The city pressed its rain nose to the glass while we made lists of places we'd go when we finally had time, which was our way of saying we believed in futures. We were both shortlisted for VP, brand, and growth. People joked it would ruin us. We joked back that if it did, we'd ruin the job right back. There was one campaign that lived under my skin more than any other. Horizon, a global relaunch for a medical wearable that turns panic into data. The pitch was mine, the language mine, the skeleton mine. A minute of fear, a minute of breath, a minute of control. "Your body isn't a battlefield," I'd written. "It's a dashboard. Let's read it." It was the first time in years I felt like my work could save someone, not just seduce them. We worked late, jittery on cheap coffee, the office emptying until the floors echoed. Jules sprawled on the carpet one midnight as I read lines out loud, her head on my thigh like a question. "You could run this division," she said, voice low. "You could steer the whole ship." I answered, "We could," and thought about how the word "we" is a fragile bridge that looks solid until a storm tests it. The catalyst arrived stupidly, the way catastrophes dress up as small mistakes. An email forwarded to me by a junior analyst who didn't realize his boss had asked him to proofread a deck. "Thought you should see this before the shareholder rehearsal," he wrote. "The copy is familiar?" Attached, a glossy 40-slide presentation titled Horizon Vision 2025, authored by Kellen Drake, the department head, and Jay Mercer. My name did not appear. Slide after slide echoed my heartbeat, my opening line, my pivot. Even the cadence of the case study I hadn't shared outside a locked folder. On slide 9, someone had rewritten my line, "Your body isn't a battlefield," into "Your body is a map." I heard my own voice speaking their words in my head and tasted metal. I reread the email chain. The analyst had been looped by mistake. Mistakes leak truth like cheap umbrellas leak rain. A rehearsal invite sat at the bottom. Annual shareholders presentation. Friday 10 a.m. live stream worldwide. I stared through the glass at the fairy lights, making a Morse code I couldn't translate. My breath shortened. The building hummed with ventilation and secrets. Jules texted, "Dinner? My place? I'll cook." I typed yes with fingers that didn't know which version of her I'd meet. She didn't know that forwarded message masked a betrayal so exact it felt surgical. We didn't start with secrets, not the important kind. Our first winter, we traded childhood cities, bad haircuts, pet names for fear. She taught me the shape of her alarms. Too many unread messages, a calendar double-booked, the way her mother's name on her phone froze her face. I taught her the shape of mine, deliverables with moving targets, meetings where every chair had a knife in it, the sound of being told you write like a camera pans and realizing it means people expect cinema every time you open your mouth. There were rituals. She left a protein bar on my desk with a sticky note, "Eat the bar." You write better when your blood sugar isn't a crash site. I left annotated decks on her chair with "You're burying the hook, dig it up in the margins." She hated umbrellas, said they made her feel trapped under a portable ceiling. So I held mine so wide we walked in the same dry circle. She ironed my blouses when I slept through alarms. I pretended not to notice because acknowledging tenderness felt like jinxing it. Little quirks got filed under devotion because that's where you put things you can't categorize. Jewel never charged her phone above 70% because she read somewhere it preserves the battery. She turned off read receipts because people don't deserve to watch my pace. She insisted on sharing Lyft receipts for transparency, a phrase that felt sweet then and strategic later. She didn't like me posting photos unless they were of scenery or food. "Let's keep our center ours," she'd say, and I'd nod, because feeling chosen by someone's secret can mimic feeling safe. When the VP shortlist went internal, she brought home champagne and let it go flat while we rehearsed our futures. "We're both going to get offers," she said, "and we're going to choose us." I believed her because belief is a habit you practice until it's muscle memory. We talked about how we'd navigate it if one of us won. We said words like grace and team and no matter what. We said, "We're not them," meaning the couples who turn love into leverage. Looking back, I can name the first lie. It wore the clothes of care. The accidentally forwarded deck didn't come out of nowhere. It came from a cluster of small recalibrations that meant nothing until they did. Jules started working late, not with me, but with Kellen, because top-down alignment is a gift. We take it when we get it. Her laptop started. Traveling in a sleeve she never zipped open in front of me. She asked casually, "Do you still keep those drafts on your local drive? So old school?" And when I laughed, she smiled too wide. I knew Kellen's style. Hug you with one arm, pick your pocket with the other. He liked to say, "There are no original ideas, only disciplined executions." And he'd look at you like you should be grateful to be disciplined. We still had our alleyway diner, our eggs after midnight when the city quieted. We still had the word "we," a fragile bridge. When the server asked, "Together?" meaning the check, Jules said, "Always," and I let it wash through me like a promise. Back at my place, she fell asleep with my notes open on the coffee table. I took a photo, because sometimes you catalog your life to prove it happened. Her phone buzzed, screen lighting with a preview, Kellen D. "Need to confirm slide order plus opening sequence. Your line about map is gold." My stomach tightened, and then I let it go because it could have meant anything. I tucked a blanket around her and told myself that trust, like muscle, grows where you place weight. I didn't see that I was anchoring to a ridgeline about to shear off. Rumors say they started meeting in the executive gym after hours because it's quiet in there. A receptionist claimed she saw them collab laughing in a way. That was not about jokes. A designer whispered that Horizon had a different creative owner now because senior leadership wants a safer storyteller. Safer than me, the person who wrote a line that made a room of engineers cry? Friends claimed I was being paranoid, that in big rooms ideas wear many names. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to be the cool professional who doesn't spiral because the person she loves is orbiting a sun with a bigger gravitational pull. Then came the perfume, not mine, not Jules, not anything sold in the lobby boutique. Something expensive and sharp that clung to her blazer like a signature. "Client visit," she said, offhand, the way you flick lint from a collar. I nodded because small lies wear better when you don't tug. I started finding my phrases in places they hadn't lived. Kellen opened a meeting with, "Let's not treat bodies like battlefields. Let's treat them like systems we can understand." The room murmured approval. My throat burned. I watched Jules watch me without looking. At me. When you write for a living, cadence is a fingerprint. Mine was signing checks elsewhere. I asked Jules, carefully, if she had shared my early Horizon draft with anyone, just a sanity check. She didn't flinch. "Kellen wanted context," she said. "He's invested. He can greenlight budgets we'll never see otherwise. The bridge." She touched my wrist. "We're so close, baby. Don't let paranoia steal our runway." That night I woke with my heart sprinting and my brain saying, "You are not a crazy person. You are a person noticing a pattern." I went to the kitchen for water and found her laptop on the island, lid half ajar like a mouth about to lie. I didn't touch it. I stared at my reflection in the black screen and thought about how easily love explains trespass. 2 days later, the gossip knife turned. A co-worker with a smile that never reached her eyes said she'd heard Jules was getting close to Kellen in the fun way and that it probably wouldn't hurt the promotion. I asked where she heard that. She shrugged. "People talk. Don't be mad at me for the weather." The words made something ugly bloom in my chest, a mix of rage and humiliation that I didn't know where to put. If it was untrue, it was slander. If it was true, it was a different kind of theft. I went looking for facts. My drafts were on my local drive, yes, but I'd shared a sanitized version with a temp designer for layout tests. The share link, locked, expiring, had been accessed from an internal IP 1 minute after I emailed it, then again 2 hours later from a device I didn't recognize. The traffic bounced through our VPN with the grace of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The temp swore she hadn't forwarded it. I believed her because panic has a timbre you can't fake. At 11:37 p.m., the forwarded deck landed from the junior analyst like a slap. My copy, my spine. A fingerprint of a cadence I'd spilled in my kitchen at 2 a.m. with Jules on my shoulder, telling me to keep going, that I was close, that it was singable now. I did what people do when their reality wobbles. I checked the thread again. I zoomed in. I took screenshots of my own work like a witness gathering evidence at a scene where the thief left your name scratched into the paint. I wanted it to be Kellen alone. That would make the story simple. But the author field said J. Mercer. The deck notes said Jules to deliver opener live. And the Q&A slide had a joke in the speaker notes I'd written in a text to her. "We're not predicting the future. We're just finally listening to the present." Stolen tone, rehomed. My chest went tight. I sat on the edge of my bed like the floor might drop. Proof hurts less than doubt, but only by a sliver. And then the real blow arrived, too clean to be anything but intentional. The truth didn't burst. It bled. A calendar alert pinged. Shareholders run-through. Thursday, 7 p.m., exec theater. Added by Kellen, accepted by Jules, optional for me even though I led the prior workflows. Optional is corporate for your fingerprints aren't required on the crime scene. I went. Of course I went. I sat in the dark, back row, my badge green-lighting my invisibility. The deck glowed on a wall taller than any apology. The first line, out of Jules's mouth, was mine. She paced with the confidence of someone carrying a story they thought belonged to them now. The executives nodded like sunflowers. Kellen beamed like a man who'd found a gold vein in someone else's backyard. I watched her deliver my argument. The fear minute, the breath minute, the control minute. She adjusted a phrase here, swapped, a metaphor there, but the bones were my bones. When the Q&A rehearsal ended, the CFO said, "This feels authored. Whose voice is that?" Kellen said, "Ours." The word made bile lick my teeth. I waited in the shadow of an acoustic panel. until the room emptied, then walked down the aisle with my hands in my pockets because fists would make me do something I couldn't edit. Jules saw me and froze like a deer that knows the headlights belong to a truck. "Ava," she said, soft, like the name might break. "Who wrote this?" I asked, even though every line in my throat already knew. She didn't insult me with denial. "It evolved," she said. "We evolved it." "By removing my name," I said. "Because Kellen needed a single voice," she said. "The title sponsor asked for continuity. Your draft was the DNA, everyone knows that." "Everyone doesn't include me," I answered. She reached for my sleeve, then stopped. "I was going to tell you," she said, which always arrives too late to matter. "I thought I could get you on stage. I thought I could negotiate you into the spotlight." "You negotiated me out of authorship," I said. My voice didn't rise. It stayed flat as a scalpel. "You turned my life into your talking points." "Don't talk like I'm a villain," she snapped, the first spark of heat. "I fought for the work. You know how this place eats credit. I thought if I kept the story safe, we'd keep the win." "We never agreed to theft as strategy," I said. She flinched. "It's not theft," she said, too fast. "It's—" She searched for a word and came up with one that made me want to laugh. "It's politics." "Politics is a word people use when they want to normalize betrayal," I said. "Say steal with me, Jules, or betray. Try the accuracy." Her eyes glossed, not with tears, with calculation. "If we fight, we both lose," she said quieter. "Kellen will bury us. He will make a narrative about difficult women cannibalizing each other. Let me get the title. Let me reach a hand back. We win then." "You already reached forward," I said, "and you took what was mine." She inhaled like the room had run out of oxygen. "I love you," she whispered. "You know that, right?" "Love doesn't mask the truth," I said. "Love without honesty is a dangerous game." I walked out because the thing with controlled explosions is timing, not volume. Outside, the rain tried to erase the city. Inside me, a plan assembled, itself like a deck building in real time, structure, flow, the cut that would land where it had to. I didn't go home. I went to the AV team. People think the power is on stage. It isn't. It's in the booth. I brought coffee and a favor, asked for a tour of the stream setup for a side project, listened to where the backups lived and who had access. I paid attention to the switchers' habits. Old school, methodical, allergic to surprises. At 1 a.m., I wrote a list not called Revenge. It was titled Run of Show, bullet points, rehearsal caches, password reset windows, cue inserts nobody would notice because they'll be looking at the person in the spotlight. I put my house key on the table and texted Jules. "I'm not coming over. Present well. I'll be watching." She typed back, "Please, Ava, don't make this war." I replied, "You already did." I wasn't walking away to cry. I was walking away to build a mirror. I didn't go nuclear. People remember explosions. They minimize precision. I needed a cut that would survive boardrooms, lawyers, and the kind of apology that spreads blame so thin it evaporates. I needed clean. First, I performed calm. I stopped mentioning Horizon in public and let co-workers assume I'd pivoted to a different account. I congratulated Jules in group chats when rehearsal clips leaked internally. I left 3 comments on the company's intranet praising the clarity of the message, because flattery buys you blind spots. Then I collected receipts. I exported my drafts with time-stamped metadata. I screen-recorded the share link logs. I saved the temp designer's panicked Slack messages. I pulled audio of me reading the original copy into voice memos at 2:13 a.m. 6 weeks ago while Jules laughed in the background and said, "You're wicked! Do that cadence again!" I clipped that laugh and labeled it Exhibit Tenderness because motives matter and so does the proof that she knew exactly where the language was born. I scheduled chance coffees. One with a legal assistant everyone ignored until they needed e-discovery. One with a tech from AV who complained that nobody thanks them unless something breaks. I said, "I see you," and meant it, because irony makes you cruel, and I didn't want to become what I hated. They told me where the redundant stream files live, where the pre-roll bumper sits, and how the backup playlist is swapped in if the primary glitches. They told me the old switcher has a soft spot for altruists and prompts. He loads everything if you ask nicely, because he's the only person in the building who prepares for failure on purpose. I built 2 assets. One, a 30-second pre-roll bumper that looked exactly like the company's house style. Logo on water, aspirational piano, the line, "Stories change the world." 2, a truth clip that followed the bumper in the backup playlist labeled innocuously as filler cam 3 break AC, so it would sit unbothered until a human dragged it in. Truth clip wasn't a rant. It was a timeline. Split screen. My original Google Doc on the left, the deck slide on the right. Cursor movements synced with my voice notes. The paragraph where I birthed Battlefield next to the deck where Jules killed it for map. A shot of the ShareLink access log, the external IP, the internal VPN. A close-up of the comment, "Jules to deliver opener live." Then a short, cold line delivered in my calmest register. Credit is consent. Remove it, and you are not collaborating. You are extracting. I didn't use names in the VO. I didn't need to. Anyone who mattered would read the subtext. Anyone who didn't could accept it as a generic compliance reminder. Plausible deniability is as important as proof when you drop a match in a rainstorm. I planned the insertion point, after Jules's opener, just before Kellen's vision section, when people are relaxed and believing. If the primary stream hiccuped, the backup would briefly take over while the switcher stabilized. To make that happen, I needed a microstutter the system would treat as a fault. So I asked the AV tech for one more rehearsal pass of the bumper for my personal reel. He rolled his eyes kindly and gave me 2 minutes in the booth at lunch. I watched his hands. I learned the muscle memory. I imagined his reaction when the stream coughed and the backup ran for 10 seconds, just long enough. I wasn't done. Revenge is lonely. Exposure is social. I slid a rumor into Slack. Heard the shareholders stream has a short creator credit best practices PSA spliced in for legal. Cute. Harmless, boring, perfect. I DM'd 2 journalists who never resist corporate hypocrisy. I didn't. Send the clip. I sent a sentence. Watch the pre-roll closely, you'll like it. Finally, I wrote to Jules. You were my home. I won't be yours anymore. Deliver your best. She responded with something that tried to be soft. No one will. Remember how we got there? Just that we got there. I stared at it until my eyes burned. Then I closed my laptop and went for a walk because anger was starting to salt me from inside out. By the time the city turned its lights on, my plan had teeth and manners. By the time I fell asleep, I could see the stream buffer stutter, the cut glide in, the room's temperature drop. By the time she realized there was a trap, it would be spring in a different life. Shareholder morning arrived with the sky slick and reflective. Executives arrived, in raincoats that cost what entry-level analysts make in a month. The theater smelled like carpet cleaner and ego. The switcher hummed. The AV tech gave me a thumbs up when he saw me in the back row like I belonged there. I wore a blazer that didn't tremble and a face that didn't either. Jules took the stage in tailored navy. She looked like a lighthouse, bright, precise, confident. For a second, the muscle memory of loving her tugged at me hard enough to feel like pain. She started clean. My opening carried in her mouth, elegant, unearned. People leaned forward. Kellen sat in the front row like a king whose kingdom always belonged to him. In the booth, the switcher tapped his little kingdom. The pre-roll ran, logo convincing the world we were good. Then the hiccup, a frame skip I had seeded during the booth rehearsal, a tiny glitch that yelled in machine. The system did what systems do, Failed safe. The backup playlist slid in for 9 seconds. 9 seconds can be a lifetime when truth is sharp. The theater screen blinked. The split screen appeared. My doc. Her slide. The cursor moved in a motion every writer recognizes as their own hand. My voice, trimmed and warm, said, "Credit is consent. Remove it and you are not collaborating. You are extracting." The access log flashed VPN 104320 with a timestamp that matched the night Jules worked late with Kellen. Gasps don't always sound like gasps. Sometimes they're just silence that wasn't present, then suddenly is. The switcher, too. His credit killed the backup and restored the stream so fast you could call the moment a glitch. But the room had already inhaled the knife. Jules didn't flinch. Professionals don't. She kept talking. Her mouth shaped my next paragraph. The audience wore new faces, alert, suspicious, hungry. Kellen slid his phone out, texted someone, texted again. The CFO looked back at me and then away, like you look at lightning and then pretend you didn't. 3 rows behind Kellen, the legal counsel stood and left. I felt a sour joy bite my tongue. The Q&A turned brittle. A shareholder asked about sourcing creative. Kellen said words like team and process. Jules said, "Our story is built on the work of many," like a benediction. The CFO repeated, "Many." The room's temperature kept dropping. When the stream ended, there was applause because rich people clap for completion. But it came late and died early. The journalists I'd DM'd posted, "Notice anything interesting in the pre-roll?" with clips captured from their laptops. Interns in far-off offices clipped the 9 seconds and looped it like a gif of someone finally naming the weather. I stood and left before the lights rose. In the lobby, glass-reflected versions of me I didn't recognize. One that wanted to cry, one that wanted to laugh, one that wanted to run. I chose the one who walked to the ferry windows and watched the water pretend it could swallow buildings. On Slack, a compliance manager pinged me. "Can we talk?" I typed, "Of course." A junior DM'd, "Holy shit. Are you okay?" I replied, "I'm steady." Jules texted, "Ava." Then again, "Please." Then nothing like she'd remembered not to put evidence in writing. The trap had teeth. The room had marks. And then the final blow slid into place, not from me, but from the person whose arm had been around my shoulder while he cut my pockets. Kellen summoned Jules to a brief alignment. Translation: a disciplinary absolution ritual where the junior sinner confesses and the senior sinner calls it miscommunication. Except this time, legal was waiting, and the CFO wasn't smiling. The company's risk tolerance had changed in 9 seconds. Someone leaked the meeting script to me later. Not word for word, but close enough to taste. Kellen opened with, "We seem to have a narrative issue." And Jules, who is braver than I wanted her to be, said, "We have a theft issue." The lawyer asked for the provenance of the opener. Kellen said, "Collaborative," and Jules said, "Authored," and then the room split along those lines. When the smoke cleared, Kellen was taking time off to focus on family, and Jules was transitioned to advisory status pending review, which is a prettier way of saying fall quietly or we throw you. The VP slot turned to ash. The building devours its wounded. Colleagues who had worshipped Jules's precision now picked apart her posture in retrospect. The same people who told me, "Don't be dramatic," when I questioned the deck now slid into my DMs with old screenshots. Kellen editing out bylines, Jules forwarding context, executive assistants coaching how to strip metadata. Nobody wanted to be caught holding the wrong end of this morality play. "Saw the clip," messaged a journalist. "Want to go on record?" I said no because I had said enough. The internet was already doing what the internet does, turning nuance into tribes. Credit is consent trended for an afternoon, then the city moved on to a scandal with better hair. Jules texted again. I didn't sleep. Can we talk? Outside the building. I agreed, because closure is a myth we still chase like good weather. We met under the awning where we used to share umbrellas. She looked like she'd ironed her face into something neutral. He used me, she said without preamble. I let myself be used. I wanted the job so badly I called it love. I know, I said, because naming it isn't forgiveness, it's accuracy. I told myself I was protecting your work by bringing it inside, she continued. That if I could stand on the stage, I could carve out space for us. You stood on it, I said. You forgot my name while you were looking at the lights. She didn't try to cry me into softness. I'm sorry, she said plain. Not the kind that begs, the kind that admits harm. I masked the truth and I paid dearly. You will keep paying, I said. I didn't mean it cruelly. I meant it like gravity. For a second, the world shrank to our breath on cold air. Do you hate me? She asked. No, I said, and saw her forehead crease. Hate would keep me tethered. I'm done being an anchor for your weather. She nodded once, like a soldier receiving orders. You made something good, she said. The 9 seconds. Clean. Clean was the point, I replied. We stepped apart because that's what comes next. The company announced reforms, creative attribution policies, metadata preservation, new training modules with slides that looked suspiciously like my truth clip. People congratulated themselves for being enlightened by the very evidence that shamed them. The board gave me a special commendation that came with a check and a note advising tone mindfulness in public channels. Rumors say Kellen is consulting somewhere with a new last name. Friends claimed Jules turned down a quieter job in PR and flew to take care of her mother out of state. A designer swore she saw Jules on the ferry, suitcase in hand, staring at the city like a person memorizing a face before letting it go. I slept. I woke. I started building a new reel with the only clip that mattered to me, the one where I told the truth without screaming. But revenge leaves residue. It clings to doorknobs and phone screens. It whispers at 3 a.m. You could have burned hotter. It asks if the price was enough. It asks if the price was too much. Then came the email I didn't expect. Not from the company, not from the press. From a stranger who watched the stream in a hospital waiting room while her girlfriend prepped for surgery. Your line about bodies not being battlefields, she wrote, made me breathe. I don't care who said it first. I care that it existed when I needed it. The blade inside me softened a degree, but the real blow hadn't finished landing. Grief doesn't show up with sirens. It leaves the lights on, waits in your kitchen, and asks if you still want to do this for a living. The company's glossy apology tour moved on. Compliance trainings bloomed like algae, green, suffocating, inevitable. HR invited me to co-design a workshop on ethical authorship, which sounded like a trap disguised as a compliment. I said yes because if you don't fill the room where policy is drafted, someone else will write it in pencil and call it law. I moved apartments. The new place doesn't see the ferry. It sees a brick wall that keeps secrets. I swapped the umbrella I held for both of us for a hood that belongs to me alone. I stopped sleeping with my phone face up. I built back a life that doesn't mistake proximity for partnership. People asked for the story at bars and DMs after panels. I told it badly on purpose, short, bloodless, more process than pain, because I refused to let strangers consume what I'd already survived. There was a deck, I'd say. There was a glitch. There was a cut. If they pressed, I smiled and changed the subject to weather, which is just politics without names. Rumors say Jules found work counseling nonprofit founders on messaging, that she's good at telling people what's theirs and what belongs to the room. Someone claimed they saw her run in the rain with her hood down. A junior copywriter I'd mentored swore she got a letter from Jules with an apology and a gift card for a coffee she won't drink. I don't know what is true. I know what helps. Me breathe. Sometimes I replay the 9 seconds. Not because I like the hit, because it reminds me I can be surgical in a world that rewards spectacle. Because it proves I can land a cut without killing what's left of me. One night, the city finally cleared its throat and produced a sunset like something expensive. I stood on the roof of my new building and watched glass catch fire. The wind smelled like rust and oranges. I thought about the first time Jules called, me a camera, and the last time she told me she loved me while she held a knife behind her back and believed it wasn't a blade. "Do you regret it?" a friend asked later, meaning the trap, the clip, the public seam rip. I answered the way a person answers when they've clawed their way back to the center of their own name. "No," I said. "Regret is for mistakes. This was a choice." She tilted her head. "Did it bring peace?" I considered the city, sirens low in the distance, rain starting again like the sky forgot itself and remembered. Peace is a word people use when they want a story to end before it's ready. Revenge is a word people use when they want to pretend justice is a luxury. Some say revenge brings no peace, but for her, it was the only way.